Hi, I'm Hanan, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, this is part of a series called Let's Talk. Today I'm going to be talking about something that everyone has gone through at one point in their life, whether it's in the workplace or in the outdoors, as in my case, or just in a new space. And that's imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the inability to believe that your success has been achieved due to your hard work, your goals, and your merit. It often leads to feelings of not belonging and self-doubt, which could be very detrimental to your performance or your mental health, or just progressing in that new space. So today I'm going to share a little bit about my experience with imposter syndrome, how I began to deal with it, and what are some tips that you can do in order for you to deal with imposter syndrome and to, quote, get over it, for lack of better words, and feel more self-confident in whatever space that you want to be in. So let's get into it. I definitely felt imposter syndrome when I first joined the bike/cycling space. I felt imposter syndrome when learning to ski and while surfing, and I was so overwhelmed by these feelings. It began to discourage me from even wanting to be in the space and the progression that I was making. I was feeling so anxious and so unhappy about things that I knew that I was so overjoyed to learn and spaces that I was so excited to be a part of. I began to constantly hear a voice in my head telling me that I don't really belong in these spaces. So I began to journal about it, and that was the best thing that I had ever done. Over time, as I continued to journal, I made a realization that imposter syndrome isn't about anybody else. It is just a mentality and mindset issue, because oftentimes people are so stoked to help you out and welcome you into this new space and offer any kind of tips that they may have for you to do better and enjoy the space. After making this realization, I sat myself down and I thought, what is it? Why am I intimidated? Is it the fear of failure? Is it the fear of judgment? For me, it was a mix between both of those things, along with the fact that no one looked like me. There were no black Muslim hijabis cycling around town or in the water or on the slopes. So I didn't even know if it was possible for me to be in this space and succeed. I wanted to know that if there was someone that looked like me doing the thing that I wanted to do, if she can do it, I can do it too. First, let's talk about the fear of being judged. When I first joined the biking/cycling space, I was so afraid to be judged on whether my physical ability was up to par and if I could do all those uphill climbs that the group was doing. I was also so afraid of being judged on what kind of gear I had. For example, I remember the very first bike meet or group ride that I went on, and there was about 50 guys, maybe like 3 women, and they were in the fanciest gear I had ever seen. I'm talking about $1,000 kits, bikes that were worth $6,000 to $7,000, S-Works this, carbon fiber that, super custom bikes. And I had rolled up in my beginner sport bike and some sweatpants and a t-shirt that I had in my workout drawer, and I remember feeling so insecure about that. I was afraid that they were going to judge me on that. As I continued to go on the days where we had rides that included a very long climb without any breaks, I would always be at the back, probably the slowest rider, and I would take breaks every here or there because I couldn't power up the mountain without stopping. All I could think about was, oh my God, they probably think I'm really bad at cycling and I'm really weak and I don't really have the skill set to be here or to be in this space. But as I journaled about it, I thought to myself, all of these guys and ladies, they did not just get up out of the womb and start cycling up mountains and be good at it. They didn't start out with $6,000-$7,000 bikes and fancy kits. They worked to get here. I need to work to get there. They had to start somewhere. And that is exactly where I am at right now. I adjusted my mindset to see that in a kind of inspirational way. They are so great and I could be there too because they started at my level at some point. I've always found it to be true that regardless of what sport you join, it doesn't matter how fancy your gear is or how inexpensive your gear is. The most important thing is your excitement and your passion about the sport. That will outshine any kind of gear you have, whatever level of ability you're at, or how people see you in that space. Once I was able to pinpoint the main issue, which was my mindset and my thoughts around it, I was able to begin kind of changing it in order to help me become more confident in that space. And what I found is the less I thought about how others will perceive me, the more confident I felt in learning and trying to progress, made me a lot of friends that taught me so much about the sport and were happy to ride in the back of the group with me at a slower pace and take breaks when I wanted to take breaks so that I felt encouraged in that space. And most of all, I never ever really cared about what anyone thought. Why am I going to start caring about other people's judgment now? I'm always going to do my best and keep my excitement. Now let's talk about fear of failure. Oftentimes we are scared to go for something because we might do it horribly and fail and look stupid. But what we don't realize is realistically, if you went for something for the first time and didn't fail and absolutely knocked it out the park, you'd probably be a robot or a superhuman, and that just doesn't exist. It's not realistic. So why hold yourself up to a completely unrealistic standard? Be kind to yourself. That's something I constantly tell myself. A good example of this is when I would go surfing. There would be about 50 guys in the lineup or scattered around, and the way it works in surfing is there is a bunch of people behind a certain set of waves in order to catch them. Some places work where it's kind of like a line. One person goes, the others wait, and the line moves up. But in the beach that I like to surf at, it's kind of a free-for-all. You just go whenever you like a wave, and you kind of have to battle it out. You start paddling for the wave, they start paddling for the wave, and whoever paddles harder and catches the wave gets to ride it. So you really have to be super confident and kind of ambitious about getting that wave. Otherwise, someone else would steal your wave. But for me, I was super unconfident and I was super scared of failing in front of others. Going for a wave and then nosediving. If you don't know what nosediving is, it's when you're trying to catch a wave and too much water and weight gets on the front part of the board and it flips upwards, flipping your board and you falling face first into the water. It doesn't hurt, but you look very not graceful when doing it, and it's definitely a fail. But I was super scared of nosediving in front of others, that I would wait and watch everybody go for waves, telling myself, you know what, I'll just catch the next one when there's not that many people, just in case if I mess it up. But then by the end of the session, I had only caught 2 waves in the time that I've been out there, which would be like an hour, 2-hour session. I started to get so frustrated with myself. I was in a way kind of wasting my time. I'd go out there and I wouldn't even practice. How was I supposed to get better if I didn't paddle out for waves and get the practice that I needed? This reminds me of that audio on TikTok or Reels if you're on there, and it goes, your fear of looking stupid is holding you back. That is so true, because at that point I was so scared of failing and looking stupid that I was holding back my own progression. So of course I journaled about it and I realized, you know what? So what if I look stupid and fail? It's all a part of learning. After enough fails, you're going to catch the wave of your life. Even the pros out there, all those surfer pros at one point were catching white water and learning as well. They were nosediving, they were looking stupid, and they were messing up and failing, and it's all a part of it. This reminds me of that one time I was surfing with a buddy of mine down at Pleasure Point, which is at Santa Cruz, and if you know Pleasure Point, the waves get pretty gnarly in that area, and it didn't help the fact that it was July 4th, so it was super packed. There were so many people in the water. I would say about like 200 to 250 people in the water, and I was feeling so intimidated, and we paddled out. She kept going for waves, but I was so intimidated that I just sat there and watched and didn't go for a single wave for about an hour. And I remembered what I had wrote in my journal, and I was like, you know what, I'm holding myself back. I'm gonna go for it. And so I went for it, and I nosedived horribly, and to the point where my leash broke and my board went one way, I went the other. I was underwater for about 30 seconds, just like kind of tumbling in the wave. And it was so bad, and everybody witnessed it. At least in my head, everyone witnessed it. So I thought to myself, you know what, nothing could be worse than that. I couldn't fail more than that, and that already happened. So I might as well go for another one. So after I caught my breath and somebody actually returned my board to me, I paddled back out again, and I was like, you know what, just go for it. And I did, and I caught the best wave of my life. Until this day, it's still the best wave of my life. But I didn't get that opportunity to even catch that wave until I had failed before, aka horribly nosediving. So it just goes to show, like, after enough fails, you are going to achieve what you have been working towards. And that's all a part of the process. The more I began to use logic to combat these ideas of self-doubt, I began to slowly change my mindset, which made me more confident in any new space that I wanted to join, especially in the surf space. And just like in the bike community, I found that the surf community was so welcoming and happy to give me help or tips on how to improve and what I can do or change to make my surfing better. I even made friends that we schedule every week, meet up at a certain spot, and surf together. Now that we've got fear of judgment and fear of failure out the way, I want to talk about the one that is the biggest contributor to my personal feelings of imposter syndrome, and it is that no one looked like me in any of the spaces that I was joining or any of the spaces that I was in, and it often left me feeling like I just did not belong in any of those spaces. A good example of this is when I was learning how to ski. A lot of you don't know this about me, but I actually taught myself how to ski. I booked a lesson, and I was unlucky to get a pretty shitty instructor who wasn't very enthusiastic about teaching, which made my experience not really that great, and it made me lose faith in lessons in general, and honestly, I couldn't book another one because it was so expensive. And so one thing about me is I am not a quitter. I was determined to learn. So I drove every other weekend from San Francisco to Tahoe. So if you know, that's a 4-hour drive. I was on the slopes teaching myself how to ski off of, honestly, videos from YouTube. But it was super difficult, and it didn't help seeing other people doing it with so much ease without a single second thought, and seeing kids as young as 2 years old just absolutely crushing it when I could barely make it down a bunny hill. On that 4-hour drive home, the feelings of imposter syndrome started to creep in. I would hear a voice in my head telling me, I don't belong. I don't look like any of these people. And these people were doing it from a very young age. What am I doing here? But again, the drive was 4 hours, and so I was forced to think a little bit deeper about why I was thinking this way and why I was feeling this way. The first thing I thought about was, okay, if I don't belong there, what made them belong there? And what I realized was the mountain does not belong to anyone. Therefore, we cannot belong to it. The mountain is for anyone and everyone, and I am anyone. But then I thought about, well, if it is welcome for anyone, why don't I see other people of color or people that look like me on the mountain? And what I realized was it's probably because the hundreds of years of institutional societal restrictions, aka gatekeeping, from people that look like me to be able to enjoy that sport. And besides, growing up in any space that I was in, no one looked like me, and still till this day, no one looks like me in the spaces that I am in. So why does it matter now? In the end of the day, I am human, they are human, and we're just humans sliding down on slabs of woods on the mountain. As simple as that. I belong here because I am here, I exist. And yes, I don't look like the majority of the demographic on the mountain, but it doesn't matter because my ability to learn is the same as theirs and just as good as theirs. And my excitement about it is unwavering. In all of these examples, by taking the time to reflect through journaling and deep thought, I was able to kind of crack the cheat code on how to push away those feelings of imposter syndrome until they weren't there. And I am so excited to share this with you today. In short, to summarize everything that I talked about today, here are the main points. If you feel it, journal it. If you journal it, reflect on it. If you reflect on it, pinpoint it being the issue. If you pinpoint it, then you can logic it, aka apply logic to that reflection. And once logic is in the picture, then you're able to begin to change your mindset in order to think in a more positive manner about your presence in that space and eventually getting over the feelings of imposter syndrome. This will not only increase your progression and learning in that space, it will also create community for you. The type of community that supports you in your passion, your journey, and your progression in that space. You will feel as if a weight has been lifted off your shoulders and you have the freedom to go for anything you put your mind to and truly thrive in it. Thank you so much for taking the time today to hang out and chat about this. If you have any comments, please make sure to leave them down below and definitely look out for the other videos on the Let's Talk series. We'll be discussing a variety of topics about empowering you in the outdoors and sharing my experience about how I have dealt with these kinds of things. So definitely check them out and thank you so much.